Hello, I'm Emma Hammett from First Aid for Life and onlinefirstaid.com. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why CPR is quite often in real life different from how it is portrayed on TV and in the movies. We've all seen situations where somebody rushes in, they have collapsed, someone comes in and does CPR on them and they come back to life and they look just the same as they did before and start speaking straight away. Sadly, that's not always the case, and I'll explain a bit about why as we go through. So the majority of the time, doing your CPR will actually mean that they then need a defibrillator, and then they are taken off to secondary level care and they're in hospital before they come back and you know, they begin to make a full recovery. So it's about expectations as well. So you don't expect them to come back to life when you're doing the CPR, which means that you shouldn't keep stopping and starting when you're doing CPR. You should keep going until there are any obvious signs of life. If somebody does come back to life more or less immediately, it's usually because they weren't actually unconscious and not breathing beforehand. Or maybe it's because they have drowned and you breathing into them has stimulated the respiratory center in the back of their brain. So your carbon dioxide you're exhaling has stimulated that respiratory center, and that's brought them back quite quickly, which can happen. So a respiratory arrest can very often be brought back slightly quicker than a cardiac arrest. With a cardiac arrest, the defibrillator is key, and using that as quickly as possible. Now, we've all seen bits on TV and in the movies where somebody is lying there on the bed. They are sitting there with a monitor behind going beep, 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 showing the heart rhythm behind them. And they're given some appalling bit of news. So it's usually at the end of the episode. And they're given this news that either they're not the father of the person they thought they were, or they've lost their fortune, or whatever it may be. And then they collapse. And all the nurses come rushing in, the doctors come rushing in, and they faff around with different bits. Sometimes they start doing the CPR pretty quickly, which is good. Most often that's done with very bent arms and probably not enough pressure, but that's because there's a real person under there. But the key bit is that usually they're not using the defibrillator until the person's got to the point of flatlining, until you get that beep. If you wait to use your defibrillator until they are flatlining, then the defibrillator's got nothing to work on, because your heart at that point has no electrical activity. Now, a defibrillator works by stopping the heart and letting the heart's backup system kick into place and put themselves back into their own natural sinus rhythm. So if you are using a defibrillator or trying to use a defibrillator and there is no electrical impulses at all, then the defibrillator will not let you shock. An automated external defibrillator, an AED, will not let you shock, because in the community, if you've got to the flatlining point, it's actually too late. In hospital, we can still do some things with drugs and overriding and what have you. But in the community, it's too late. So the key message for using a defibrillator is use it as quickly as possible. If you can get a defibrillator on the chest within the first 3 minutes of someone being unconscious and not breathing, and they're in a shockable rhythm, the odds jump from 6% recovery to 74% recovery, and that's pretty impressive. So use a defibrillator as quickly as possible. The other myth I just want to go through as to why CPR is different in real life and in the movies is, in the movies, very often when they're unconscious and not breathing, they're completely still. Whereas in real life, quite often they may be experiencing, looking like they're having a seizure, because seizures are triggered if you have inadequate blood supply to the brain. And so sometimes the early signs of a cardiac arrest can be that somebody is exhibiting the signs of a seizure. So it's always important to check to see if that person is breathing. It also may be that sometimes they have this sort of thing where their muscles go rigid and their arms go up as they collapse, and they may be making sounds as you breathe into them or as you push on the chest. So the key message is, if you are positive that that person is unconscious and not breathing, to do CPR and to do hard and fast chest compressions as you've been taught, and not to stop unless there are obvious signs of life, and to use this defibrillator as quickly as possible. You cannot do any harm by using a defibrillator, because if they are not in a shockable rhythm or they don't need it, it won't let you shock, and it talks to you. So I hope that's been helpful. That's just a few myths busted as to why CPR can be different to how it is in TV and in the movies. That's Emma Hammett from First Aid for Life and onlinefirstaid.com.